men and women. We cannot have our boys' clubs and exclude women from our million-man marches and expect women to get us and where we're coming from. That said, ladies, perhaps you could back off just a little bit and understand that there are true molecular differences between us.
Blanket.
And those lips.
Yeah, and that tooth.
And those alabaster shoulders.
Yeah.
All men are not cheaters.
Girls should know that all guys are pigs, and, you know, if you look good, you don't need to be confident. Yeah, pretty much.
For himself. I'm still going to come home to my wife or whatever. That, you know, I'm married. I'm going to be faithful to you. If you don't believe it, then, you know, that's why we got married. So you should believe it, and that's it.
And we don't think with our penises 100% of the time. Most of the time, but not 100%.
Master, why have we gathered here on this day when we might have remained at the bath to frolic?
We process differently. In fact,
men and women are not the same. I thought you ought to know. Men and women are not the same.
and there's some very interesting statistics to support this stuff. McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, researchers looked at the gender differences when it came to body image, and they put 25 men and 16 women through a 12-week strength training program. And they were asked about their body image before and after. Body images improved for both men and women, but the reasons were different. The reasons for women were they often focus on appearance, and the study suggested that they got a boost in their self-esteem by focusing on their strength. For men, the absolute amount of weight that they lifted was not as important. But what was important was that they could lift more than the guy next to him. The male, which once dominated enrollment at college campuses across the United States, now makes up only 43% of students. Also interesting is that women are 10% more likely than men to choose milk as a beverage option simply because they like the taste. Got milk? Stats say that 82% of librarians are female and 8% of registered nurses are men. And despite many physiological similarities, men and women are wired quite differently from one another, especially when it comes to how our brains work. Dr. Roger Davis states how mental illness manifests itself along with the manner in which women and men handle situations differently. For example, women have an additional internal cycle of their own. The menstrual cycle is quite complex. Hormonally speaking, women suffer from depression some 2 to 1 more often than men. Men have a 1 cycling factor and women have 2. Oftentimes, estrogen supplements help bring this under control. But Davis says women are much more cognizant than men when it comes to recognizing the simple fact that mood is dependent on chemistry. The female brain produces much less of the neurotransmitter serotonin than its male counterpart. According to the Society of Women's Health research, a lack of sufficient serotonin can lead to depression and other disorders. It's speculated that in the 1970s, there was so much emphasis on women's equality, it actually caused a lot of research not to happen. And all across medicine, now we're realizing that men and women are genetically not the same. In the past, most research was done on men, but a greater recognition of the diversity between the sexes is painting a more complex picture of how things really work, especially when it comes to the intricate workings of the human psyche. And just how are the brains of men and women different? The genes we get from our parents determine our sex. Sex determines the hormones that circulate in our brains. Hormones trigger the fetal brain to grow in particular ways, and this meshes with the learning we undergo throughout our lives and make up the people that we are. Estrogen plays a big part in how women learn, think, and remember. The hormone activates a larger field of neurons in the brain, laying down a wider network of neurons for more detailed recall. Women's greater ability to communicate is also brain-related. Men have physical larger brains, but studies show that a woman's brain has many more cells in the left hemisphere. That area controls listening and speaking. Females also have a higher concentration of dopamine, which is a chemical messenger that nerve cells use to communicate. More messengers mean better and faster connections. The right hemisphere, the side we use to navigate the world and call on to do spatial tasks, plays a dominant role in the male brain. Baron Cohen's book suggests that the female brain is hardwired for empathy, while the male brain is designed to understand and build systems. Other differences noted are that women value reciprocal relationships while men seek power and status. We all know that. Women look for empathetic friends and equality. Men, they look for shared interest and competition. Women use talk to bind socially, and men use conversation to demonstrate knowledge, skill, and status. Women talk about people. Men, they talk about objects. Women show aggression covertly with verbal tactics such as gossip and exclusion. Men are more likely to hit and push. Why do the sexes have different brain structures? It's suggested that it's simple evolutionary adaptation. You see, women were tied down by childbearing, while the men hunted bison or raided neighboring villages. Women stayed put and depended on each other for survival. The female brain therefore adapted, and women, well, they cultivated relationships using languages, listening, and picking up nonverbal cues. The female brain is also good at multitasking. Studies show that women use more parts of their brain when given a wide variety of verbal and spatial tasks. The male brain focuses on one thing at a time and has a remarkable capacity to block out anything that distracts it from the task at hand. As far as job-related statistics, 30% more women in the workforce than there were 30 years ago, 6 times as many women solicitors, 18 times as many women managers. Men go online more often and spend more time on the internet than women. I wonder if that's surfing porn. For example, men get more likely to check sports news, get financial information, download software, or participate in an auction. Men are also 42% more likely to pay bills online than women. Women lead in other areas such as sending email messages, and 74% of women look up health and medical information online, compared with 58% of men. Boy, I'll bet you the same holds true for getting directions. And it's been often stated that a computer model of today's version of the Barbie doll, for example, found that her back would be actually too weak to support the weight of her upper body, and her body would be too narrow to contain more than half a liver and a few centimeters of bowel. A real woman built that way would suffer from chronic diarrhea and eventually die from malnutrition. 20 years ago, the average model weighed 8% less than the average woman, but today's models weigh 23% less.
The differences between women and men. Women think twice and guys think when